listening to Inclusive AF with Jackye Clayton and Katee Van Horn.
Hi, Jackye.
Hi, Katee. How are you doing?
Living the dream. Every day's a holiday up in here. I'm home. So, things are
Miracle
good.
of miracles. You've been
Yeah.
traveling a lot. Share with
Well,
our listeners some of the places that you've been. I'll share as well, but
yeah. Houston.
she's mad at me because I live in Waco and I did not drive for 3 hours to see her. Normally I would.
Yeah. I am sad about that, but I was busy the entire time, so it really would have been a complete waste of a drive for you. But let's see, I was in Germany. I was in France. I don't know. And now I'm going to do that again starting Saturday. So, it's great. It's great.
Wow.
I'm not tired. You're tired.
I know. All of my travel has been local. It's been California. I spent some time in Dallas. I just got back from Austin. A lot of local traveling and exciting times. As long as I am not at home, it's been pretty exciting.
It's very good. Well, hey, by the way, this is the Inclusive AF podcast, folks. So welcome. Jackye and I have a special guest today, and so want to turn it over to her to introduce herself and share a little bit about her background. So Meaghan, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Excited to be here. I've heard so much about you all. We share some mutual people that insisted that this would be a good conversation. So I'm glad to be here. Meaghan Walls. I am in Omaha, so I don't know where that triangulates all of us. I am, book, puzzle, nature, plant loving wife and mom of two girls. Keep busy with activities and work in the disability realm of things in a lot of different ways. I'm in Omaha now, but I was born and raised here. Which is kind of where my journey started, but I've lived in Chicago, South Bend, Indiana, Boston, and suburbs, I guess, and then made my way back here, where I had more family. I drug my New England-born husband out of Boston and got him back here to the Midwest, which was a miracle. A miracle I didn't think was going to happen, but. My journey here in Omaha, my mom co-founded a medically based childcare when I was young. So my exposure to the disability world was really organic, and just I was immersed in it. I was around, the kids and the educators and the therapists and the parents, and it just became a natural kind of process of learning what things got in the way of families and kids being able to do what they wanted to do. And then I, volunteered and worked at the organization. And then as I got older, I realized, hey, I'm really good at problem solving. I'm kind of good at this engineering thing. And I really got interested in the adaptive technology side of what kids and the families and the therapists were using. And I'm not that old, but it was really it was still at the very beginning stages of when assistive technology was mainstream and beyond just hospital beds and wheelchairs. And so it was really still an emerging field. And I decided to pursue rehab engineering, which is a mashup of physiology and engineering, really to solve human access problems. I have a blog on my website about what the heck is a rehab engineer because I got asked that question so many times. So it'll take you all in depth if you want to explore that. But really, I just went to learn how to take devices or tools that are out there and use them to remove barriers for people to do the things that they wanted to do. And that's really been the driving passion behind the journey I've taken through grad school and working for Easter Seals, Massachusetts, and then into my current role as the CEO for the Center for Disability Inclusion. It's really been centered around all different ways of removing barriers to participation so that people can do what they want to do in the way that they want to do it. And so sometimes that's technology based, sometimes that's training, sometimes it's environment, sometimes it's just straight up attitudes. So that's me in a very big nutshell.
That's a
Awesome.
very big nutshell.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so much to unravel.
You're welcome.
I wanted to jump in, and I know Katee has questions too, but like I think of adaptive technology, and there's so many things, there's so many things that we need, or places where I could see a need for assistive technology. How do you, like, what is the most common thing that you work on? I can't imagine. It's like, oh, I would want to solve so many different things. It's like, how do you know where to get started? You know?
Yeah. There is no one starting place really. Shouldn't say that in terms of the technology, but the starting place is just understanding the need. And so it's very specific to what's the barrier, and kind of following that direction. But I think one of the most fun parts of talking about assistive technology is that people often think it's really complex, like exoskeletons or talking robots that can clean your house, or it's very simply wheelchairs and things that you use in the bathroom, or and it's really just helping people understand it's any tool that makes your life easier. I tell people I get chronic migraines, and when we jumped to this highly remote workforce, my migraines went through the roof, and I came to realize it was a computer screen induced thing. So I wear blue light glasses. Everyone thinks I wear glasses typically. But that's assistive technology. That's just a tool that makes it so that I can function to my optimal amount throughout the day. And so it's really starting with that conversation, and with those, whoever it is or whatever the situation is, like, what's getting in the way? What are you having trouble doing, and why? And then problem solving through what could solve that. And sometimes you'll find it in a store, and sometimes you get to make it, and that's when it gets really fun. But it's really understanding the person and what they want to do and why they can't do it.
Like left-handed scissors. I was looking at pin snips. It was a version of The Amazing Race. This woman was trying to make a bib, and my husband is brilliant, and I am not brilliant. And so I'm looking at it. I'm like, why are they having a problem? She's like, I can't cut it, and crying. And I'm like, what is going on? And he's like, those are left-handed snips. And I was like, well, should she change hands? And he's like, they're not gonna work. I was like, what is happening? Like, I don't understand. And I was like, it's those types of things. Like you said, it doesn't have to be as major, like you said, exoskeleton. Sometimes it's just like, oh, if you had a product that built it upside down, I could use it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
in this way, I can't.
And sometimes it's putting in place a strategy of using color-coded cards to mark things. And so it's understanding how people process information, what physical barriers are in the way, and just kind of trial and error a lot of times.
Absolutely. I will say I have a very slight impairment from I'm over 40 now, and my sight, if I don't have these on, everything's slightly blurry on my computer screen. So that is a very minor inconvenience. But what is the one thing that you think from an organizational perspective? I know you do a lot with children, but is there something that, like, in organizations is requested the most, or is the most needed today?
Yeah, so most of my work today falls kind of in two different realms, actually. So under my consulting brand, I do mostly either sensory equipment work with schools. So right now I'm in the middle of, the tail end of a year-long project, working with a school district to understand what sensory equipment they have available to their teachers and their students, educate them on how to use it, what that means, how they understand, its purpose, and architectural access. But with the Center for Disability Inclusion, we're working with businesses who are striving to be employers of choice for people with disabilities. And so we are doing training and consulting with that sole lens of positioning them to be successful in that diverse hiring. So, we like to say you have to look inside before you can, project outside, because if your insides aren't prepped to, train, retain, promote people with disabilities in your workforce, then going out and recruiting them and hiring them is going to be a wasted effort, because they're not going to stay. They're not going to see a place for them in your business. And so we do a lot around accommodation process with companies, as well as a lot of training just to sometimes tell them it's okay to talk about disability. And it sounds so simple, but sometimes they just it's like they need permission. Not a bad word. Let's normalize this conversation. And then from getting some of those foundational elements around, let's have a conversation about mental health and wellness. Let's have a conversation about neurodiversity. Let's talk about accommodation processes and understand that it doesn't have to be super complex, and it can be really streamlined so that we get to a good endpoint. Then it really, those are those channels to open up the doors to actually change processes and change programs. So that all of those things are in place. So that, again, is another long answer, but really, from the business standpoint, there's been a really elevated interest in talking about it, which has been great, because that's how progress gets made.
Hi there, I'm Peter Zollman. I'm a co-host of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast.
And I'm Stephen Rothberg, and I guess that makes me the other co-host.
Every other week, we're joined by guests from the world's leading job sites.
Together, we analyze news about general, niche, and aggregator job board and recruitment marketplaces sites.
Make sure you sign up and subscribe today.
I'm glad that you said that. I feel like there's so many things, especially with children, that we mask as being a child that isn't, that might be a disability, and you don't realize it until much later. And one of the examples that I always say is like, I didn't have an active imagination. I had an anxiety disorder. This was not an active imagination. And so many times as children, you'll say, oh, they're just being little. Or when you get older, like, oh, you forget things because you're just getting old. No. It's, it's because I couldn't hear you because something was going on. So you never got it. And that there's something that we can fix there so that you can be more active and be more of a part of that. You had mentioned more about like having the conversations and helping organizations in that way. Do you also help people with disabilities know how to communicate it with their employers? Because there's two sides. If your employer hasn't gotten that, but I still need to be able to get my needs met, how do I do that in a non-threatening way of saying, hey, so I have this thing, and so I'm going to bring this thing with me. I don't want anybody to freak out. Let me explain why this is in place. And I don't want to put it back on the person with a disability, but it's always one of those things where it's like, I know that I'm going to bring this thing with me, and there's going to be a conversation. So if they don't have it ready, and I'd like to prep them, and that's how, is there anything to help the person with a disability as well?
I mean, there are. So we don't work directly with candidates. So if someone's out there job searching, right, we don't work directly with them in their processes. But the way that we, and we never, we never call anyone out in our consultation with companies. If people share and disclose, then that just enhances the conversation. But it's never something that we require or point out. But when we're talking to the workforce in general through the training and the consultations, we let them know, like, there are 500 different types of disabilities. 74% of them you can't see, they're not apparent, and 26% of US adults identify with a disability. So in this room, let's say we have 100 people, 26 of you more than likely have some level or some type of disability. So people with disabilities are already in their workforces. And so when we talk to them with that assumption. And so we talk about language, inclusive language, and building that culture where it's like, you want people to talk to you about this need that they have, but you have to put a culture in place where there's trust and they know that it's not going to come down on them later, and it's not going to, it's not going to, they're not going to experience limited progression in their career because they've told their manager that they need this, right? So it really comes out not one-on-one with individuals or individual consulting with the employees with disabilities, but from that cultural angle of it's all tied together. You want your employees with disabilities to talk to you, because then it becomes a performance issue. To what you were saying about masking things and kind of brushing them off. And if within your culture you don't have a safe space for me to come tell you that I've been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and I'm trying to get my insulin managed, and I need to take I need scheduled 15-minute breaks to be able to like check and take care of that stuff, then I'm not going to tell you. And the side effects of me not taking care of myself are going to look like work performance issues, but they're really unmet accommodation needs. And so if you've had these conversations where you've put in place the structure and the trust to have those conversations, you're actually better able to manage like the performance of your workforce and have more and then be able to turn some of those accommodation requests into best practices that benefit everybody. But you don't get to have those conversations if people are afraid to talk about disability. And the other side of it is not every disability is going to come with an accommodation request. So sometimes, they just want you to better understand them and how they work. So for me, right, if I come to you as a manager and I say, hey, I get chronic migraines, they're pretty well managed, I have tools, but if a front comes through really quick and I don't catch my tells, here's what you're going to see. From the pain, I may all of a sudden not communicate the same way. I'm going to have a harder time finding the words. And if you don't know that I live with chronic migraines, you may think I had a lot of fun over lunch and make this assumption that I, went out and had fun. And now there's this perception of job performance and irresponsibility versus what's actually going on. So I may just want you to know, if you see this is what I'm going through and this is what I need. I don't need a whole accommodation process tied to it. So we try to talk through those types of scenarios and help with the cultural approach to disability and those conversations. And it going all the way back to children. And if you can't tell, my dad likes to say that I tell connect the dot stories. So I hope you can keep up, because I go around. But what I thought of when you first were talking about behaviors with children, my daughter was diagnosed with ADHD this last summer. And so much made sense, because I always described her as a child with big emotions on all sides of things, someone who saw with their hands, she touched everything everywhere all the time, and some other things that kind of got her in trouble in kindergarten. And then as we put pieces together and we got a diagnosis this summer, it all made sense. But for so long, I was just like, she just has big emotions, like happy, sad, mad. They're just big, but there was more to it. And so if you don't raise that level of awareness, to your point, and that's when I was like, oh, and then it becomes a performance issue, whether it's school or social or work, because those personal needs aren't being met.
Absolutely. I think, first of all, I love your stories because it reminds me of my sister who does the same thing. So we're all good with that. I think the part that I liked everything of what you said, but talking to the HR leadership, whoever it is, to share with them that it's okay to talk about these things, but at the same time, it's not outing someone or assuming something or going, oh, do you have this? Is that why, obviously you never want to do that because that shuts people down very quickly. So I love the idea of just having some open conversations and some educational programs to help people with how do we talk about these topics in such a way, and especially when it comes to mental health or neurodiversity. I think there's so much unknown, and it isn't a one size fits all in any way, shape, or form on any of these topics. So I like the idea, we have in HR, the ADA interactive dialogue where we ask questions of, what do you need? All of these things. What I've found recently, to your point on maybe they don't need an accommodation, the other side of that is maybe they don't know what to ask for or what they need. And so, I think that's also just a great way to start the conversation. And as an HR person, as a leader, obviously it's usually HR that's having this conversation. It's having some suggestions of what might help. Like to your point, okay, I need an extra break, or I need, I need to step away during a meeting or whatever it is. So having those in your back pocket to suggest to folks is, I think, such a really important piece as well. But just being able to have an open dialogue, I think that means the world to folks when you are just listening and trying to show empathy of, I might not understand it completely, but try to help me understand, and what can we do to make you successful in the workplace. So I love that.
Yeah.
So not a question, just a comment. Yeah.
No.
No, well, I'm blown away though by it shows up as a performance issue. I never thought about it. Like I never thought about the fact that like it was easy for people to understand that, like when my mom passed away, that maybe I wasn't fully present. It was easy for them to understand that. But what if you're just depressed, right? And all I needed was maybe an extra 30 minutes in the morning with my dog so that I can ease into my day.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of doing that, it creates all of this anxiety and resentment. And now I'm really not focused and all of these different things. And because I just heard something frightening to me the other day that was like, if people stop showing up the way that they used to, they're having a behavioral issue, they're probably looking for another job. And it's like, whoa, that is, how are you drawing that line without realizing maybe there's something else that we can do? Or maybe just giving people the space, because they don't need an accommodation from me. They need the space for them to take that extra step. Blown away.
Well, and that ties into that empathy piece. We talk about that in some of our trainings, the different types of workplace empathy that that exist, and how to choose the level that's appropriate for the situation, but how it's like an underappreciated superpower.
Right, understood. Do what you have to do, Meaghan. By the way,
I got 3 big ones.
No, do what you have to do.
All right. We'll let Meaghan settle. So I think the other piece that is really interesting, I want to find out about, is just the thoughts on kind of those accommodations, and what are some of the technological, what technology, whether that's robotics, I think the basics that, and these has been years ago, were, just even the technology that goes over your screen on your computer to enlarge text or to print it in a certain way that someone with dyslexia is better able to read it and recognize. This was years ago, and one of our friends actually called this out to us of like, when you put hashtags on a tweet or wherever, capitalizing every word, just so it's easier for folks to read it. And, and again, this is just, it's such a simple thing that I don't have any reading issues, and I still at times I'm like, wait, what is that hashtag? I don't know what that means. That just basically is because I'm not cool enough, but yes. But I think that would be another part that I would love to understand is just from a technology, what are some of the like technologies that you see commonly used?
Yeah, that's called camel casing for anyone listening.
Thank you.
Because of the humps. So let's have a hump every time there's a word. And I want to share, I'll share a few of those. I'm going to back up a moment because Jackye was, when she was, to a point that Jackye was making, one of the things we tell HR teams, is the lived experience of the person with the disability that's coming to you for around accommodation or having that conversation matters the most in the process. Because of that, if they've lived with it lifelong and they've been in other jobs, they may have an idea of what strategies worked or what they needed. But if they were in an accident or it was an injury, it's been an onset of an illness, they have no idea what's out there. And so being able to know that there are experts out there, organizations, the Tech Act program within your state that can help voc rehab, different resources to help come up with a list of what's out there, versus just pulling something off the shelf. Because and the story always comes to mind. There was an organization, they had an admin personnel that she'd worked there like 30 some years, and she was diagnosed with a degenerative eye disease, can't remember which one. And so they really wanted her to be able to stay in the role that she was in and keep doing the things that she was doing. So they gave her a catalog of assistive technology for low vision and blindness, and told her to tell them what she needed. And she doesn't know. So, they bought this and then it didn't work. They bought this and it didn't work. And so it was just this cycle of trying trial and error, but not in like an informed way. So then that creates more frustration. Then you don't end up with the right tools, right? Ripple effect after that. So that's why, so my background in assistive technology, it's one of the things we talk to our partners about is like, I'm a certified assistive technology professional. Like I've been trained to have those conversations and help narrow it down, right? Figure out what features we need, what the functionality needs to be, and give you a few options to consider. Because without that, it's like you could walk into a Kohl's pharmacy and like just pick some things and not actually know what they do or if they're going to meet that need. And so much of the elements that will make that come within a lot of those accommodation requests are actually just kind of built into things technologies that we use now. So whether it's closed captioning or contrast or magnification, audio to like speech to text, or audio out, most of those things are built into the systems that we're using, and it's just making sure that they're set up in the right way and utilized the right way. So if you're someone who can better articulate yourself through speech and writing is hard, maybe it's because you have dyslexia, or maybe it's just the way you process, working with your manager to allow you to submit voice or video, versus writing a paragraph or an email or paper, like how you're communicating information. So sometimes it's tapping into what you already have, which is why most of the accommodations don't cost anything, because it's already incorporated in things that you have. Sometimes it's going to be a footstool. Lighting a lot. Old buildings that have fluorescent lighting are terrible for migraines, for vision. They're really disruptive to people with sensory processing disorders. And so if offices have fluorescent lighting, it might be more desk and floor lighting that gets requested, but not complicated, and not gonna break the bank either. Which another practice that we talk about that helps doing a presentation at the HR Nebraska conference this summer that's on accommodations through an equity lens. And it's looking at all of those things in the process. And one, when we talk about equity in this space, having a centralized accommodation fund in an organization so that the money that's paying for the accommodations isn't coming from an individual manager's budget, because, right, they want to protect their budget. So they're less likely to be willing to extend on accommodations if it's going to negatively impact their budget. But if the organization has said, here's our pool of money, this pays for whatever, people tend to get what they need faster.
Leading a growing business, it's like building a plane while flying it. Team building, decision making, and scaling all at once. At CPO Playbook, we get it. That's why our podcast, ranked in the top 10% worldwide, tackles the toughest leadership challenges with insights to help you lead smarter and grow faster. Tune into the CPO Playbook podcast, because leadership doesn't come with a manual, but we're pretty close.
Absolutely. And I will say, from the HR side of things, I was told very early on in my career, and this was at a very large corporation, so this is different in smaller organizations, but there aren't, when you're thinking about accommodations, there are so many things. And usually for folks that have had the issue, whatever it might be, for their entire life, they are able to identify very easily, here is what I need. To your point on someone that, maybe this is a recent situation, they might not know as well, but there isn't any budget, like, unless it truly is going to break the company, whatever is needed for the person to be able to do their job is what you should do. And that, just from a fair and consistent, and also knowing that a lot of folks with disabilities, unfortunately, are underemployed or skipped over for roles, for promotions, for different things like that. And that just creates a whole societal issue and kind of perpetuates other problems. And so, those accommodations are just so critical. But to your point, they don't usually break the bank. It's usually something fairly simple of just, I need a floor lamp, or I need a stool, or whatever it might be. And how easy that is to fix, to be able to bring in folks with different ways of thinking about things, different way of processing, all of that. So thank you for saying that as well.
I feel
So
like so many of these things are, I'm sorry, Katee,
yeah, go ahead.
but it's like, what came to mind as I was listening, it was like, we give people, I love the equitable process and thinking of having a standard budget, but it's almost like anything where we give people a budget, their own, like a stipend, because they have a work at home need. I feel like it wouldn't surprise me if everybody had some kind of accommodation that makes things easier for them to be their best, especially I'm thinking of a remote or hybrid environment. So many times we already give people additional resources for an extra screen or a specialized chair, or all of these things to make it easier for them to do their day-to-day tasks. And I think language is really important. I think just the word accommodation can be intimidating. And the big piece for HR professionals is quit trying to be a movie star and think that you're like the end all be all of everything. Like, it's not your job to know every discipline. Yeah, I'm talking to you.
I'm a movie star. I am a movie star. Come on.
There's so many people that are, because they don't know about accommodations, don't want people to have the conversation because of their own issue. Like, we don't talk about disabilities here because everybody's going to need an accommodation. Like, are you listening to yourself right now? And like, number one, first of all, quit trying to handle it all by yourself. Like, get someone to help you. Start with that. But then if everybody needs an accommodation, and well, guess what? Then they just need an accommodation. And won't we be so great after we get them all in place?
Yeah, well, what you bring up is something we talk about too, is that connotation that comes with the word accommodation. And so it's like, if we can find a way to shift the corporate mindset around accommodation and what that triggers and what that means, it would just make it so much easier if we could look at them as tools to perform your best in your role. If you're a graphic artist, I'm not ever going to ask you to and expect you to do your job without your preferred software, or to do your marketing and fundraising without a CRM, or those types of tools that you need to actually perform the role and succeed in your job. So if we look at even something as simple as when you're talking about the extra screen, or if we put them on the same playing field and say, do you need 2 screens to most efficiently do your job? Yes. Okay, great. Do you need a screen reader to most efficiently do your job? Yes. Great. So if we put them on the same playing field, then there isn't this sense of like accommodations are taboo, but extra resources are okay. Yeah, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, I mean, that's why we want to hear you. It's not a soapbox. I mean, I feel like, again, like when we're onboarding, we go through a process of making sure people have things for their job, but allow people to fill in the blank and stop giving people, your 3, standard whatever clauses, like number 2 pencil, blue, black, and red ink. Like, maybe I know what I need in order to get my job done, because maybe I'm a grown up, maybe. Allegedly, supposedly.
I can't help myself because I always go to the HR language, because that's just where my brain always is. So, but it's such a good point. Like, how are we thinking about this and talking about this? Because I mean, even just something as simple as I want a Mac versus a whatever non-Mac. I don't even know what you want to call them anymore.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, what is that even? But it's funny because it is like our finance folks always want, the other laptop. But I love the idea of just think of it as tools. Like, how are we making sure that people can be successful in their role? And going back to what both of you have said, like, we need to take away that scariness of just having a conversation of what is going to best help you to do the job? What is going to help you be successful? I think that's just such a critical piece. So, I would love to know, like, from a advice for professionals that are in this space in HR, I think Jackye just nailed one of them with, get help. But what are some things that you would recommend for HR folks who are facing some of these asks, or I don't know where to start, or how do I start the conversation in my own company? How should they do that?
There's no, I mean, it just depends so much on the company, right? And the culture and where you're starting in the process. Shameless plug at the Center for Disability Inclusion, we put out a lot of programming. We have a webinar that's coming up that's on digital content accessibility, but we have monthly network meetings that we love to have guests come check us out. This month, we talked about how compliance and culture can work together for innovation, and how you need both, and how to start some of those conversations. But our inclusion summit that's in September is all about, our theme is audacious dialogues. It is all about how to start these conversations. So our keynotes and our learning sessions will all be centered around these kind of taboo, tough topics, how to build the framework for them, how to build the case, how to prepare for the conversations, how to create psychological safety, because you really have to first make sure that you've created a safe space to have those conversations. So I'd say if there's one answer, it's look there first. What kind of culture do you have for innovation, conversation, honest dialogue, and fix that first.
Awesome. And that I wasn't even trying to give you a softball to have you share all of that, but I mean, all those things are perfect. So I think this is what folks, need and want to just be able to learn, because I think it's also, we talk about all types of diversity. And I think for so many people, it is I don't want to talk about it because I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm afraid to approach it because I don't want to say the wrong thing, or, I mean, even just the term disability, has a certain connotation, and some folks are like, I am not disabled, I am differently abled, or I, have special abilities. Certain language, just, you want to make sure you're saying the right things and doing the right thing. So having a conference, having some of these places where you can have that honest dialogue and have those open conversations and learn is huge. So thank you for doing that and for starting those conversations, because I think any way that we can do this the right way and teach people to do this the right way is such a great thing to be doing. So that is awesome. So would love to know, what are you working on right now that you are most excited about?
Wow. See, this is why questions ahead of time. I've got like 16 balls in the air right now. Which one is my favorite? I will say I really am enjoying and the response from the school district on learning what resources and the equity of the distribution of their resources, and giving them tools to try to meet the needs of students with sensory processing needs in the classroom, and rather than sending them to the office or elevating them for behavior. That's been a really fun ongoing project, but I think honestly, we're neck chin deep in our Inclusion Summit planning, and it's a collaborative conference. So the Kansas City chapter of NAP, the Kansas City Chamber, the D&I Consortium, and us. And we have been so intentional on how to walk the walk. So we're demonstrating, vendor supplier diversity in action in the way that we've chosen our vendors. Everything from the book fair vendor to all of our food, and just really integrating all of those aspects in. And so putting together something this unique and pulling the people together that are going to be giving the content is just a really fun thing to see developing. And it's gonna be awesome. So it's ongoing. It's not like a one thing right now, but the intentionality that we're putting behind it, I think it's given us something to be really proud of.
Awesome. Very cool. So we are ending our time with you here shortly, but I would love to ask, what is one thing you want to make sure that the folks listening heard, one takeaway, one take this action right now? What is one thing that you'd like folks to know?
Disability awareness is everyone's responsibility, and it's okay to talk about it. And you're going to, with disability being the most intersectional of all the identities that we protect in this space, it impacts your entire workforce. So it's the right thing to do, and it's a business thing to do, and it's an innovation thing to do to start talking about it.
Awesome. Thank you. Jackye, what you got?
I think, don't steal this one, Katee, but I think what I'm taking away is, as you're working from a HR perspective or HRBP perspective, helping with different things that are coming up, I'm thinking about performance. As you're looking and doing that performance audit, make sure that you consider that there could be an underlying disability that potentially the person who is being affected doesn't even know yet. Just throw it out. Just let friendly reminder of the benefits that we have that maybe people should explore. Start there, because you can save a lot of grief, and you can also save your company a lot of time and dollars just by being a better advocate for people, and it doesn't take a lot just to get those things started. And I think that to me, that's the most important thing that I took away as we look into performance feedback and becoming a culture of feedback, and actually looking at those things can be helpful in more ways than one.
Yeah, I think for me, I recently had a conversation with a leader And they said, oh, every time we were putting someone on a corrective action or a performance improvement plan, all of a sudden they have an ADA issue. And I was like, or let's flip that around. Maybe the reason why we're now at performance. So I think just your call out of, is their performance changing because of something that, is going on that maybe has changed for them, or that they've recently been diagnosed, or maybe hasn't been diagnosed yet? And are we looking at kind of all of the things that might be going on externally? There's, as we all know, a lot going on, and a lot of mental health pieces just have been ignored for a very long time. So I love that call out of, don't just assume, oh, they're just not performing anymore. There could be so many other pieces to this. And so I really appreciate you saying that, and, calling that out for folks that are on the front lines, working with leaders on this. So awesome. So
Right? It's not always burnout.
it's not always, well, some days
Next
it is.
time,
Some
next
days it
week
is. Yeah.
on Inclusive AF.
Yeah. So Meaghan, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. Where can folks find you if they want to connect with you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can check us out at centerfordisabilityinclusion.org. And my email is pretty simple. It's just mwalls, MWALLS at centerfordisabilityinclusion.org.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you for taking the time today to chat with us. We really appreciate it. This has been a very eye-opening, very interesting conversation. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Of course. So Jackye, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Me too. I'm going to be at home. Are you going to be at home?
I am. Yes, I am. Yes. Well, actually, I have to go get my claws trimmed because I broke one. So yes. But yes, kind of at home. Thank you all for listening. This is the Inclusive AF podcast. Bye-bye.
Bye.